Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum students. I hope all of you are doing fine. We studied about the communication technologies. In the previous chapter, I told you different topologies to make a network. And going ahead with this topic, today we are going to study a little bit about communication and transmission concepts. Some of these concepts must have already been known to you because a little bit of their introduction has been done in O levels computer science, and some of them are going to be a bit newer and deeper. So let's go ahead with it. Today we are going to study about the data flow modes, the message types, and the transmission modes. The data flow modes are simplex, half duplex, and full duplex. As you might remember, in simplex mode, there is only one way transmission of data. The data can only either be sent or it can be received, but we cannot do both sending and receiving in the simplex mode. For example, your dish antenna can only receive transmission from the satellite. It cannot send it back. Then you have the duplex mode. The transmission is both way, means the data can be sent or received, but not at the same time. You have seen people talking on walkie-talkies. Maybe you have used one. Once somebody holds down the button, grabs the channel, they can speak, and then they say over, means they are releasing the channel, and now the other person can speak. So the data is being sent and being received, but not at the same time. Then we have full duplex mode, in which the data can be sent and received simultaneously, just like we do in a telephone call, that we are talking to each other and we can speak at the same time. A little bit insight into the transmission modes, the data flow modes of the transmission. Basically, these are the same things that I just talked about. You can pause on this slide and use this as a reading material for your own. This is just your knowledge base, because book has only 3 lines about this topic, so I thought I would give you some more material about this. Then we have the message type. Remember that a message can be either a broadcast, a multicast, or a unicast. Broadcasting is a type of message in which we are sending the message to all the participants of the network, all the nodes of a network. All the end systems are receiving that message. That's a broadcast. A radio transmission or a TV transmission is actually broadcasted because everyone that is having the receiver of that transmission can receive that. So broadcast means sending a message to everybody. Then you have multicast. You must have sent an SMS to more than one person at a time, an email to more than one people at a time. So if you're sending one message to many recipients, that would be multicasting. Not all of them, but many of them. And I'm sure by now you have seen the trend. Unicasting is one-to-one communication, one sender and one recipient, one receiver. As per the need of our network, different types of messages are circulating within our network. Remember, in this chapter, I want you to mainly consider the networking thing that we have studied in the second chapter of AS, the local area network and the internet itself. So I'm talking about a message which is circulating within a network or on the internet itself. Then we have transmission modes. How the messages are actually transmitted within a network. There are 2 ways of doing that. One is called circuit switching and the other is called packet switching. Now, when I'm saying circuit switching, I'm actually asking you to imagine a dedicated pathway between two devices, a dedicated channel between two devices in which they are connected with each other. No third person, no third node is actually connected. Within that connection, this is a dedicated bandwidth between two uh, ends of a communication systems. Circuit switching was actually developed in the old telephone lines. The publicly switched telephone network, or the PSTNs, used circuit switching in the old days when the telephone started working. When you wanted to call somebody, you pick up the receiver, you call the operator, tell the number to the operator, and then operator connected you to that person you wanted to call. So physically, your connection was made, your circuit was switched to that number, and then you are able to talk to that person. Now, although this method has been changed, it has been the telephone exchanges now have been digitized, but the same thing is happening. The operator has been replaced by the digital exchange, but when you're calling a number, you're connected to that number. So those exchange machines are actually making a direct connection from you to that number which you are trying to call. A circuit switching example. As I've told you, it establishes a dedicated connection between two devices. This is actually the picture from your book. You must have done a video call or audio call lately. So when you do that, you actually establish a direct pathway between one computer to the other computer. As you can see, this diagram is just trying to tell you that there can be many switching systems, many telephone exchanges, or many connecting devices between those two computers, but actually they are making one physical dedicated path which is only going to stay until the transmission is happening. As soon as the transmission is over, this path is going to be terminated. Let's see this example. It might clear things up a little bit. There are a lot of connections going on, but as you can see, the green highlight is actually showing you a dedicated connection, a pathway between terminal 1 and terminal 6. Now, the terminal 1 here, as I told you, whenever we are doing the video call, we are actually using the circuit switching. So you can see from terminal 1 to here terminal 6, you have this green connection. Now what happens there is circuit switching actually happens in few steps. First of all, the sender provides the identity of the intended receiver. Once the receiver is identified, the system checks if the receiver is ready to accept data. If you keep calling me, I'm offline, the call will not reach me. If the receiver is available, the sequence of links is established across the network. On the internet or in a network, we are all connected somehow. By using the intermediate nodes, by using the devices in between those two, sender and receiver, we actually establish a dedicated link, like just like the one shown in this example. After the link is established, the data is transferred. And as soon as the transmission is done, the links are removed, and that green pathway which you are seeing, it would be still there, but it would be removed. It would not be a dedicated link between this terminal 1 and terminal 6. So in circuit switching, you must assume that you are actually making a direct dedicated connection from one node to the other. This is the dedicated connection of those two computers, and no third person can interfere in that connection. The second thing is packet switching. Now, when the internet came along, the concept of packet switching evolved. As I've told you, the analog telephone lines, actually the telephone started as an analog system of communication. So the analog telephone lines used circuit switching. The concept of circuit switching was to establish a dedicated connection. But the packet switching actually does not depend on a dedicated connection. If I'm here and one of you might be sitting somewhere in another city, through the internet, I can have many different nodes that are linking me to that city. And when I send data to you, the data will be uh, divided into packets, and those packets will try to choose the best pathway available to them to reach their destination. The only thing they would have is the IP address of the destination, and the routers and the gateways of the internet actually would direct them to wherever that IP is located. And based on the search of that IP, they would find the destination. Look at this example diagram over here. Three packets are actually trying to reach from this sender to this receiver. Now, there are a lot of intermediate nodes. There are a lot of different computers, a lot of different gateways and routers and bridges which are interconnecting these computers. But what those packets do, they try to find their optimum path. They try to find their best path available. And they can choose different paths or the same path, or their path can divide. They can go through different nodes, different computers that are connected across the network. But based on their IP address, all of them are going to finally, in the end, reach their destination. And at their destination, they are going to be reassembled into the exact same sequence which we need them to be in. Like one of them can, one of those packets may reach early, the other packets may reach late, but there would be reassembling of those packets. I'm going to explain that process in my next lecture about TCP/IP. So they would all be reassembled and presented to the user in a way that the user can understand them. This is how packet switching works. Now, from the diagram, I hope it must be clear for you that there is no dedicated pathway. All the packets are actually using the shared paths, a bandwidth actually which is being shared across all the network for the communication of all the different messages. And still, based on their IP address of the sender and receiver, they're able to find their destination. So to put that process into steps, the data is packaged into portion inside packets. Each packet has a header, and the header contains the instruction for the delivery plus the data body. We are going to see in the next lecture how a packet is divided into the data and different things. There is one little thing. A packet switching can be connectionless or connection oriented. What I actually meant by this, that based on the packet switching, data can be sent before the connection is established. In a connectionless service, the packet will be dispatched with no knowledge of whether or not the receiver is ready to accept it or not. You can send me the message through packet switching, I'm offline, but when I get back online, the packet would reach me. If I'm not there for so long, the transmission may very well be lost in some cases as well. So connectionless service actually means that the data is sent before the confirmation of the connection is there. A sender is just sending data before having established the connection with the receiver. In the connection-oriented service, however, the first packet is sent, which includes a request for an acknowledgement. The receiver, if the packet is received, the receiver sends that acknowledgement back to the sender. And after that acknowledgement is received, the sender starts sending the rest of the data packets. Now, if there is no acknowledgement received, the sender tries again with the first packet, but it will only send data when the connection is established. And how would we know that the connection is established? When we receive this acknowledgement from the receiver. Okay? That acknowledgement actually tells the sender that the receiver is there and ready to accept data, and then it can send the data to the receiver. Now, in the different case scenarios, we use connectionless services and connection-oriented services, and they both are equally useful in our day-to-day communication over the internet. Let's talk about the devices that play the role in the establishment of a network. Now, first of all, there are network interface card. There can be a network interface card based on cables, or it can be wireless. Most of you people have not used or configured a cable based network interface card, because all the devices nowadays comes with a Wi-Fi antenna built into them. Your mobile phone, your tablets, your laptops, all of them actually have the wireless network interface card. And then to make a network, we need a hub, a switch, or router. If you remember from a previous lecture of star topology, a hub or switch or router is the central device that acts like an exchange machine to connect all the computers with each other. Now, a network interface card in the old days used to look like this. You can still spot this port in your laptops. This one, the coaxial cable port, it doesn't come in the network interface cards anymore. But this port, which is just like the telephone line, it is still there in your laptops. Well, most of the laptops and all your desktop computers have it. Its size is a little bigger than the telephone's cable, but the appearance of the jack is same. The size would be RJ45 here, and the telephone cable size would be RJ11. A wireless network interface card looks something like this. Well, if you have a desktop computer and you want to enable Wi-Fi connectivity, you might need to physically install that wireless network interface card. And if we just get a quick review of your O-level concepts, remember the MAC address, that every network interface card is unique. It is assigned a MAC address, and you have already studied the 48-bit MAC address, which had two portions, one to signify the manufacturer, and the other portion is to tell us about the serial number of the device with that manufacturer. And all your Wi-Fi cards have that MAC address built onto them. And if you're thinking about that this type of card is not there in your mobile phone, but still you have the wireless Wi-Fi antenna in your mobile phones and laptops, so which means that the MAC address is already assigned to them by the manufacturers. already. So this network interface card actually enables our computer to be connected to the network. Right now, that network word includes your Ethernet, your local area network, or whichever network your computer is trying to connect to. All right, moving on, let's talk about the central device, which when this in the start of the star topology in the really old days, it used to be a hub. Then the hub was replaced by the switch, and now you see the switch has been replaced by the router. Now, what's the problem was there with hub? Actually, if one word which can be used to describe the difference between all these three devices, so that one word is going to be the intelligence. Hub actually just get the incoming communication, and then it just send out that communication to everyone on the network. For example, you have a network of 4 computers connected with a hub using star topology. Computer number 1 is trying to send the data to computer number 3. But what the hub is going to do, it is going to receive the data from computer number 1, and it is going to transmit that data to all 3 computers. Now the computer number 2 and 4 would see that their MAC address are not matching, their IP address are not matching to the packets. The packets have computer number 3's address, so they will not pick up that data from the hub. Computer number 3 will only receive the data, but the data would still be broadcasted to all the nodes connected to the network. This is how the hub works. Switch was a little different. Switch can keep track of addresses. For example, if you have an 8-port switch, and on those 8 ports you have 4 computers. Now we can imagine that computer number 3 is connected to port number 6. The port is where you plug in the cable of the networking cable. So the computer number 3 is connected to port number 6. Now if the computer number 1 is trying to send data to computer number 3, the switch will not just blindly broadcast the data. The switch would know that once the data has been picked up by the computer number 3, the switch would know that computer number 3 is connected to the computer port number 6. The computer number 3 will have its own IP, its internet protocol address, as an identity. So the switch would know that this IP is connected to port number 6, and whenever somebody is trying to send data to this IP, it would be automatically directed to port number 6. It will not be broadcasted. It would be a unicast. It would be transferred to only the intended recipient, not everyone on the network. So the switch is a little bit intelligent in that manner. Then we have a router, which I think all of you, as you have the DSL internet broadband connections in your homes, you're all familiar with the routers. And you know that you can log on to your routers and you can set the network policies. You can restrict people from connecting to your network. You can install a firewall over there. You can block access to certain websites. You can block access of certain users on the network. So router actually is the most intelligent device. It lets you do all those things. And the task that we studied in the chapter number 2, I'm sure you remember these terms: the NAT box, the gateways and bridges. The router can work as a network address translation box as well, translating your private IPs of your network to one public IP which is assigned to you. There can be 10 different private IPs in your network and only one public IP assigned to you. So the router will safely uh, take the communication of all those private IPs, translate that into the public IP, and when the response comes back, it would be again translated back to private IPs and given to the respective computers. So summing the difference up, the hub actually mostly were just a connecting device and a repeater or amplifier for the signals. It used to broadcast the data, which actually caused a lot of unnecessary data traffic on the network. Imagine that every time a computer is trying to send data, the data is sent to all the computers, all the nodes of the network. So that is going to cause a lot of unnecessary network traffic within that network. But as I told you, the switch can check the IP. The switch can know this IP is connected to which port, and it can send the data to that port. But the limitation of switch is that switch can only recognize the IPs of the network it is connected to. For example, if your network is uh, a home network is made up of 6 computers, and those 6 computers are connected through a switch. So those 6 computers would be able to communicate with each other, but they would not be able to communicate with any other network, because the switch will only recognize the IPs of the network that it is managing, that it is connected to. That's where we need to add a bridge or a gateway device. I really hope that you give a good reading of chapter number 2 as well. And lastly, a router is something that can actually read the IP addresses, and it can direct the IP addresses to the network which they belong to. A router can build up a lookup table, an address table, so it knows that which IP belongs to which area, which IP belongs to which network, and it can simply act as a gateway for those IPs to travel from one network to the other network. And this is why routers are actually the backbone of our internet as we know it today. So this was my today's topic for you. I would hope that you would solve the worksheet that I'm sending along this lecture and do the thorough reading of 17.02 and 03 of your books. And inshallah, in the next lecture, we would be talking about very important thing, the TCP IP protocol suite. Until then, stay safe. Allah Hafiz.